Bill and Della Costa and PJ Somerville. I'm really honored to be here. So last year, Mayor Castor appointed me as the inaugural wordsmith of the city of Tampa. And what is a wordsmith? Think about blacksmithing. You know, that's making horseshoes and iron implements. So a wordsmith is making things out of words. And my role is really to connect the community and connect neighborhoods through the written word and the spoken word and the read word. And I'm having a really great time doing that. It's a lot of fun. I am a poet and a writer, so I thought we've got a short period of time for me to talk. I thought I would read a couple of Tampa poems for you. This is all about Tampa, and I'm a native. My mom was a native of Tampa. So one of the first projects that I did with the city this year was during April, which is National Poetry Month. And we decided to run a citywide poetry contest and ask people to write poems that were an homage to Tampa. And we did get lots of wonderful submissions, and what I really loved about that was we got submissions from lots of people who were not, you know, professional, in quotation marks, professional poets, people who just really wanted to celebrate Tampa. And some of the lines from some of the best poems were put onto a beautiful piece of artwork that we're calling the Poetry Post. And some of you might have seen that sort of trumpeted in the news this past week. Eileen Goldenberg, the artist, made this beautiful sculpture, and we've got lines from, I think, about 12 or 15 different poems on this. And it's going around the city. Right now it is at Municipal Hall, right, Melissa? And we think that it's going to stay there probably till December or so, and then it's going to start traveling through the city. And what's really cool about it is that there's a little post box on the Poetry Post with paper and a writing implement, and we're encouraging people to write their poems and put them into the Poetry Post box. So I think it's really a fun way to get people writing and thinking about poetry and just having fun with poetry. So that is our most recent activity that we've done, and we've got some things coming up that we're talking about. We're sort of in the planning phases of. So it's really been a great year so far, and I'm very grateful to not only Mayor Castor, but to Robin Nye and Melissa Davies at Arts and Culture for including me in this. So with that contest, I wrote a poem too that was an homage to Tampa. Again, I'm a Tampa girl, and this poem that I'm going to read for you really travels around the city. It opens with the Light Queen. I named her that. And I saw her this morning with her bolt. And she is on top of the SunTrust building. And I didn't realize till I started digging in that she's actually a ziggurat. She is not a pyramid. So this is about the Light Queen of Tampa. But I wanted to point out, especially because Linda's here, that at the end of the poem, you're going to hear about a house. That it is a house that came through our family. It's not in our family anymore. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that house because it's also part of Tampa history. Let me get myself organized here. Would you mind if I laid a piece of paper on this desk?
Certainly.
Thank you. Okay. The Light Queen of Tampa. When moon-crowned minarets dangle like charms from our sunset, Tampa's azure ziggurat begins humming a hidden song. It's a middling blue song, a gift that spills down Franklin Street and out to all her familiars. She sings to the 11 silver crescents. She sings to the Phoenix of Tampa Theater, the organ, and the marquee bright as a meteor. To almost lost Jackson House, where Ella slept. To the forgotten corner where Billy Graham preached. She harmonizes with the neon bridges that glow like bangles up the arm of the river, and with the Jose Gaspar rocking in his manatee cradle. She purrs to steel horses bedded down on Bay Shore, to the longest sidewalk sailing on like a kite and the mullet flashing under Ballast Point Pier. She sings to Ebor's dry, haunted speakeasies and West Tampa's quiet clock towers. She hums a lullaby to Oaklawn Cemetery, humming most to Nancy and William Ashley, their black and white graves. She croons to the avenue where John Kennedy waved. From the ice where the bolts trace their figure eights to the concrete sombrero where the Buccaneers reign. And as day checks its watch, ready for dawn, she serenades her remembrance to the very oldest house. The house where my grandfather, a young man, stepped off into World War I, then decades later posed on the porch again with his returned from the Second War sons. That house sits empty now, bereft of family, blue tarp for its roof. But its secrets, like all the secrets in this place, stir to the light queen of Tampa, heavenly ziggurat, casting her mystic blue song over us all. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I've been so involved in the literary community here in Tampa, and it's so great to see friends that I've known for decades. And I'm a teacher, I'm an educator, so I've, had the joy of working with, I think I counted it up recently, over 4,000 students in my career. And that's been wonderful to work with budding writers. So I consider this work as the Wordsmith just an extension of all of that. Would you mind if I read another poem? Please. And please keep me on track. Don't let me go over, my appointed time. So this is One House Down, which came out right before COVID hit us, and it's sort of been in hiding and in quarantine because of that, and I'm glad to bring her out with me this morning. She was described by, I think Jeff Klinkenberg called her a love song to the city of Tampa. The cover, by the way, designed by my husband Jeff, who's in the back, is a bungalow in Seminole Heights where we live that's still there. It's on Branch Avenue. And he manipulated this photo that was originally by the Berger brothers. You'll find it in the archives at the library. You guys are such a great group. I want to share, I'm going to share Nebraska Avenue Torch Song. So, a torch song is a love song that's sort of unrequited. How many of you have sat at the light at Sly in Nebraska and looked over at Jenny's funeral home, and what do you see? The white cat! The white cat! So the white cat is our sort of tour guide in this, or maybe not really tour guide. The white cat is our observer in this poem. Nebraska Avenue Torch Song, and it starts with an epigraph. I always get them confused. An epigraph from a sign on the street, which says, "Don't be a downer, buy your partner some flowers." I went along Nebraska Avenue and I jotted down names of different businesses and establishments. You're going to hear some of those. From Body Parts of America to Mercy Church, the white plaster cat on the funeral home roof has seen it all. 15 miles of wish you were here, Nebraska Avenue, first gateway to Tampa, sweet times on the river and a plunge in Sulphur Springs. Nebraska Avenue, glory of the 20s. But tin can tourists left before we were born. The high flume ride was scrapped for Alpine Liquors. The fancy arcade made way for a dog track. Since then, the white plaster cat's been our eyewitness on unrequited lives flopping in the streets of old motels. Casa Loma, Loma Linda, Swan Oasis, and Royal Palm. Recovering addicts in the halfway house. Sidewalks crammed with sofas, stoves, the furniture moving on, the jilted, neglected, deserted, and dumped. Let's turn down this bed. The river and springs are still alive. Young neighbors are planting azaleas. On her slope above the scenery, the white plaster cat is holding fast. Last time they remodeled the funeral home, they shingled a new roof and ditched the white cat. But they had to put her back. The people were in love. And I'm going to close with one poem, and then I'm happy to take lots of questions. When Jeff and I moved into Seminole Heights 26 years ago, it was a very different neighborhood than the Seminole Heights it is now. You know, it was a sort of a sketchy place, a little bit maybe even dangerous. And, you know, going down Nebraska Avenue, especially in those days, from Sulphur Springs and all the way down into the city, that was an interesting drive. I remember one morning my 8-year-old son, as I was driving them to school real early in the morning, said, "Mom, there's a lot of hitchhikers on this street." So when Ellis came in, we felt like that was the beginning of something really exciting. I know lots of other establishments too. Am I taking too much time? Okay. So I think y'all can take this poem. It's called After the Poetry Reading, A Condom. So you can just imagine the streets at those times and the things that you might see there. I went to a poetry reading at Ella's, and this is a kind of a true story in a way. I stepped away from the bar at Ella's, where the din is handcrafted and foams up to a roar, as the famed poet served us his lines succulent and southern. With his Rhett Butler accent, the poet summoned old Uncle Walt. So Whitman came among us with his taste for bacony bodies and sweat-odorous men, draped his arm over the poet and reached for the jalapeno poppers. I stepped away from the cherry martini that had me teetering on those heels I hardly ever wear anymore since they kick up my bursitis. But I put my contacts in too, so what the hell. I stepped away from the wine-rinsed laughter and the joke I told. If this place could have its pants down, this one does. This mugshot of a neighborhood where I live with its one long avenue stretched like a naked leg. And what about that woman in the towel once, right there across the street, 3 a.m., outfoxed by the absence of a bathtub and her mislaid name? Of course the cops were called, and they folded her like a burrito into the back seat. Just another Tuesday night in Seminole Heights. The night was just 3 beers along when I left the julep-voiced poet singing of Lincoln Continentals cruising the side streets, their flopping mufflers. I walked into the after-rain on Shadow Lawn Street. Twilight sorted its lingerie in the leaves, rosy and white. And I tottered down the block toward my car, while in all the yards, Confederate jasmine mounted the fences, bouquets on the bridal veil bushes shuddered, and the magnolia tree came inside each mammoth blossom. Then, just as I leaned to unlock the door, I looked down at the old brick street and saw it, lying flat in the dirt, the deflated jellyfish lust. Used, tossed over, open-mouthed, smiling. It was the remains of someone's poem, or at least the start of one.